responsible, whether the network, the environment responsible is capable enough of withstanding that. I might fail. I don't mind. But from every failure, I will learn how to patch, how to apply. And as a team across, it helps me bring in more synergy. I'm more confident about the capabilities of the other person. And this is what the range brings on the table. It's apple to apple.
And I think it can't get more real than that. Let me put it that way. And I think when we conduct this, so Dipto, trust me, it helps me to just clock my response time. Because we all know it's going to happen. It's a matter of time. And I think we all do all this exercise just to prepare for that one eventful day. Now, looking at the time, team, what I really want to do is if quickly you guys can talk about post this drill, how the team should collaborate, what the KPIs you believe for industry leaders we should measure to show ROI. I think most of us get haunted by this question. You're asking X amount for conducting this exercise. How are you going to show ROI? So I want each one of you to talk quickly, and then if you can keep the response crisp and brief. I want to go back to audience, give them time to throw some questions at it. So,
I'll make it quick. Thanks, Rahul. Again, this red team concept which you're talking about today is at a very entity level. That is, entities have been doing pen test, and now they're moved to do this red team concept scenario based. But if you look at it, red teams are typically, or these kind of drills, simulation drills, are done at the regulator level. Which means to say that, let's say in the UK or US, you have the Department of Commerce who ties around, let's say, 24 banks together and does planning, scenario planning for 6 months. And then there's a build-up process of about 2-3 months. And then they identify 2 weeks in which all the banks are hit at one shot by a DDoS kind of an attack. And that's when they will try to see how each one of those banks, their respective blue teams, are trying to address the situation. Now, this is a very coordinated, large-scale, critical infrastructure kind of an attack. Today, it is happening at the banking level and at the telecom level. But in India, we are starting to do it at the entity level, which is good because there will be a time when, let's say, the regulators here as well will call all critical infrastructure companies for these cyber drills, and that's when you need to be ready for that. So you start doing it today at your entities to be part of those large, massive, large-scale drills tomorrow.
Thanks.
I want to address this in two parts. One is the pre-engagement modalities, and then the post-engagement. I have some notes, so I'm not checking my mails. I think the first, for a client to get this done successfully, or any organization to get this done successfully, is very clear. Sony mentioned this objectives. What are you trying to achieve? You could list down flags, as he very rightly mentioned, or it could be a generic statement. We want to try and simulate this scenario, that scenario, etc. Second is the scope. I think organizations should be very clear. Are you going to allow me to email X number of people? Are you going to allow me to contact them over LinkedIn, Facebook? What is the scope of the testing? Can I walk into various offices? Which offices are in scope? Which buildings are in scope? Can I enter your data center, etc.? Can I test you through your vendors? Are you allowing me to do that? Because attackers don't care for scope, but I mean, we need to. So, and the scenarios, what scenarios are we going to play out? So those need to be spelled out in as much detail as possible. The next success criteria is coordination. When this activity is going on, there has to be a high level of coordination between your team and whoever is at the other end. One, to maintain secrecy. Second, in case something is going wrong at the other end, a very quick outcome is, this is because of the red team attack. So you don't want that to happen. You want the client to know exactly what scan you're running at what time, what's the steps you're taking. So that coordination protocol should be established before the engagement. The intensity level of the finding should be gradual. You don't want to launch a DDoS as the first stage of your red team. You want to go slow and slow, simulate the real world as much as possible, and then see at which stage the response and recovery kicks in. The next success criteria is coordination. When this activity is going on, there has to be a high level of coordination between your team and whoever is at the other end. One, to maintain secrecy. Second, in case something is going wrong at the other end, a very quick outcome is, this is because of the red team attack. So you don't want that to happen. You want the client to know exactly what scan you're running at what time, what's the steps you're taking. So that coordination protocol should be established before the engagement. The intensity level of the finding should be gradual. You don't want to launch a DDoS as the first stage of your red team. You want to go slow and slow, simulate the real world as much as possible, and then see at which stage the response and recovery kicks in. And now we come to the KPIs. So I think if you've done this homework properly, you know exactly what's the sort of scenarios you're playing out, what expectations you have from this exercise, etc. Then there are a number of KPIs that you could work out. So if it's simple, the spearfishing component, number of people fell versus the number of people targeted. If it's a data exfiltration, the amount of data that was exfiltrated versus the amount of time that we had. If it's an endpoint infection, the number of endpoints you targeted versus the number of endpoints that got successfully infected and did a callback to your CNC server. If it's a credential attack, then how many privileged IDs were you able to compromise? So I think these are some of the key metrics, and then as you run these scenarios on a regular basis, most organizations are doing this one-off once in a year, and I'm impressed that you do this 2 or 3 times a week. You know, and then these scenarios give you a trend. So obviously, if you measure them well. The last point I just want to bring in, because I know the mic may not come back.
It's coming back. There will be questions.
No, I'll be done. My notes would be over, so it'll be something I'll have to think through. So who should go in for this? I think it makes great sense for organizations that are at both ends of the maturity spectrum. So most organizations that today are engaging on red team are those that have done the basic hygiene. They've got the SIM, they've got a SOC, etc., etc. And then they say, okay, let's put this to the real world test. But I think it also makes great sense for organizations that are just starting out. And I have an example where, you know, when the Panama Papers leaked, so law firms were really scared, but they have never cared about security. And so now suddenly the senior partner, the founding partners are concerned, but they don't know how bad the situation is. So a 2-week engagement where you walk in, walk out, and you're able to exfiltrate highly confidential data, I think that's an eye-opener. So now you don't need budgets, you don't need to convince on budgets, you know. So senior management knows in language that they understand, the business perspective, the impact from a business perspective of what could happen if somebody went after them, like the guys went after Mossack Fonseca. So I think somebody who's starting out, a red team is a great way to know what are your big ticket gaps and what are the quick wins. And then of course at the other end of the spectrum where you've done your ISO and PCI, etc., and then you want to see where the critical gaps are. Thank you.
I'll keep it short.
Thanks.
Again, I'll go back to the first point that Rahul had raised. And it's very important to inculcate cyber drills as part of the process. If I know how to evacuate in case of a fire, and if I'm prepared for that, I'll exactly know what measures to take. If the cyber drills are inculcated as part of my process, then the metrics that have been highlighted by KK, you would know them. You would have mapped them through your risk management processes. You would know what is critical, what is not, what information to protect. Have those drills and complement them with these kind of process metrics, and you'll have your own answers. It'll take some time, but as a repeatable process, the question is it has to be repeatable. And once it is done, you'll have your own answers. In terms of ROI, security does not have an ROI. It just does not. Every other thing I can calculate an ROI because I know that what if, and I can actually have tangible results. But in security, I might continue to invest, but I would never know what would be the implication had this happened. So it's very difficult for organization. I think this is something that everybody faces, every organization faces, and especially when it goes down to finance. Big question mark is what is the use of this? And that is why these kind of drills, bringing in process owners, business owners to make them aware of the fact that if something like this happens and the implication of not protecting it can lead to revenue, loss of reputation, whatever. So.
Okay, so I'll kind of very quickly present a different perspective, probably building on what they said. So for us, I think there are 2 ways we look at measuring this. One is a very objective way that we have very clear KPIs for, and that's containment time. So from detection to containment, what is the time that it used to take us 2 years ago, and how I'm driving that containment time below, to the smallest number possible. However, that's not the only way. I mean, there are subjective ways of looking at it. I think from a red team perspective, you asked a question of skills earlier. I think one of the ways we measure our red team is if they're not being successful enough in a series, that means they're not good enough. So this is time to either change something, skill them differently, or bring in someone else, etc. So that's one measurement that we do. I think without sharing numbers here, and I know we're short on time, but I think we saw between 2015 and 16 about 25 to 30% improvement year over year on the amount of technical issues that we were finding through these exercises, and that's a great improvement for us. On the blue team side, we kind of, the best way to help everyone understand this is that once in every 10 days, we help them identify a process improvement that they need to bring in. So that's the kind of benefit that the blue team kind of realizes. And as I think was said earlier also, it's not about success and failure of the red team and badge of honor, but this is about what improvements can I drive on every step of this way. And that's what I think is focus for us.
Thanks, team, for keeping it short and precise. I think what I would like to add here is, and I think Sumit hit the lane, I think for most of the people in industry, it's the time from reduction to containment. If we are reducing that, I think we have a win, and we are moving into positive direction. And I think Sony did hit the nail on that. If a consecutive report shows the same exploits still exist, I think something needs to be changed. I will just add one more point, that instead of having a red team, blue team competing with each other, I think the culture should be we are working for the same goal, and we need to educate each other. Nobody better than a red team guy can talk to a blue team person and tell him, this is how I got in, this is where you need to strengthen your system. And we have those sessions with our hunt team, which are external partners. Once we have a successful hunt report, we sit with them, have a collaborative session with hunt team sharing with us how they got in, what were those loopholes. And I think those are the collaborative sessions which should be encouraged and held more regularly. Now, with having said that, I would like to go to the audience. Any questions, anything? Yeah, a few hands. Can we have mic here?
I'm Jaydeep from ITC. I have two questions. One is pertaining to how do I make a business case in an industry? I mean, we are diversified, kind of businesses. So for a hotel, the business case is different for red teaming activities. When I talk about manufacturing, industrial systems, SCADA systems, there has to be a completely different approach in convincing them and getting sponsorship about red teaming. Another issue is when we go out to management and say that hey, we got everything in place, we got mature processes and technologies. However, we have to keep testing this to see how we can withstand a real attack. That itself puts an element of doubt as to are we lacking something. So it's there has to be very subtle ways of getting a sponsorship and building a business case. So that's a question I have to Anthony.
So let me put it this way. If we are in the airline industry, let's say, and on September 10th, 2011, I came to you and said, let's put bulletproof doors in all the airplanes, would you give me the budget?
No.
No. But one day after that, you will realize it. Now, the reason why you realized it is because of the impact it has created. So until and unless an organization is hit and they have had an impact, they will not do anything about it. Now, once they have been hit and they start doing things about it, they will see that return of investment. The other entity or the other competition or whichever is the other organization, they are just learning from that experience, if I put it that way. So there's no specific ROI that you can call for a business case on this. You have to do it, because if you don't, somebody else will do it and the impact will be larger.
And I'll build on what Sony has just said. I think outside India, and Sony has already mentioned it, it's easier because the regulators demand this.
Yeah.
I think we are getting that way. I think that digitalization move is going to help in, and I hope this point is considered in the overall campaign. To answer your question specifically in terms of, I think, again, the panel has been telling that it's easier to learn from others' mistake. Go back, refer to DBRI, talk about that. But most importantly, I think as an industry security leader, we should be open-minded. I'll tell you the biggest hindrance getting these kind of proposal approved is, I don't want to go to my board and tell, I'm not confident on my own framework, which I am responsible to be getting tested. I think we have to change that culture and say, I'm pretty confident that we can handle this, but there is always that unknown factor, and I want to have that visibility. And I'm throwing some events. I'm pretty sure whichever industry you are, there are enough example out there in just Google it and you will find how, I think Hilton and name any hotel chain, 2016 has been a really bad year for hotels. So you will get enough material to support the proposal.
Thank you.
Hi, myself Rajiv. My question is to Mr. Soni. I think when we talk about the blue team and the red team, I think both the teams are having a highly skilled resources, and only the difference is their motivation. The red team might be breaking the doors, and the blue team is protecting the doors. But I think the three example which you quoted in the consulting perspective, you can catch hold of the email account, or maybe you can make a transaction by using an application, or you can plot a malware on 10 workstation in the internal environment. I think you are so confident about it. But when you look at those practices in various organizations, what are the low-hanging fruits which the red team can eat up? Because I think the organizations spend too much of money for the gateway level protections, and even though the SOC teams are equally highly skilled to ensure those kind of protections are being mitigated, they do have a compensatory controls as well. So I think the way you commented, I think it is very scaring for the people over here.
So let me put it this way. Organizations are doing their bit. You have people who are putting in SIEM technologies. However, the challenge is that the people who are running those tools and technologies are not completely or constantly trained to identify what's happening on the environment, right? You might have this $1 billion tool that you have put in, and there's X number of people managing it. But if they don't see different types of events, they really don't know what they're seeing on the environment. Now, coming back to the question of red team and blue team, while in, let's say, a target kind of an environment, you have both coexisting together and complementing and learning from each other's experiences, in the real world, it's totally different. Because my objective, or my invoice gets paid if I'm able to get into the environment. And I need to make sure I'm able to compromise, or let's say not get detected by the blue team. So there might be anything to any length you might go. It's basically the tagline that we're using for our session here, which is a warlike situation. It is a warlike situation between the red team and the blue team. There is no real coordination. The coordination happens post the event, where you have a debrief session such that you learn out of the outcome.
No, I think my question is towards what are the low-hanging fruits which red team can eat? Because I think you might be doing this consulting for a number of organizations.
Sorry. Most of the time it's user awareness. Users do not know what to click on, and there will be a specific link created, and that will introduce a malware. The malware could be destructive, constructive, or reciprocative. So it is mostly user awareness. They need to know what they're doing. They need to be aware of what they're clicking on, and ensure that spear phishing and those kind of activities are addressed.
So in short, I think you concluded that there is a logical level access which can be compromised either by spear phishing, or maybe by plotting some malware or user awareness issue. So I think everything started from the logical access control. We talk about the firewall, gateways, IPS and IDS, but I think if we compromise on a logical access control, that's the way you get hold of the network.
In most cases, at least what we have seen is we address scenarios of this nature which are targeted to users, and we are able to get logical access of the network and the environment.
And I did mention at the start of the session, if you want to look at the low-hanging fruits you want to eat as a red team member, look at the literature available. 95% breaches just followed 9 tested patterns, which starts from logical access, social engineering, and everything. So there are tried and tested method which even Sony or KK will say, which is deployed by hunt teams, as we call them. And then that collaboration, which I think Sumit and I was mentioning, that's for in-house teams. We like to prepare ourselves and do involve you guys. So just look at those literature and you will get those scenarios. It's writing is on the wall, like if 95% of your breaches are just due to 9 patterns, they must be pretty successful.
Thank you very much.
Okay, team, due to the lack of time, we will end the session. All of us are available. I would like to thank all of you for an interesting session. Thank you, everyone.